Hello everyone, welcome back to my backyard street line display, and today we have a 2005 American Electric Lighting Series 125, or Roadway 125, whatever you want to call it. It's the same either way. This is obviously in mercury vapor, and which might be a rare sight for some of y'all, but for me this is pretty normal because these things are everywhere in mercury vapor by me. So it is cool to have one though, because my utility used these from their beginning in 1987 all the way to when they were discontinued. So the entire production run pretty much exists out here in every single variation and lighting type for that matter. I started out with mercury vapor first as a replacement fixture for either pole knockdowns or ballast deaths, or also new installations. They use these in new installs up until the ban in mercury vapor actually, but most of the new installs happened in the late 80s and the 90s, but they did them all the way until the ban. And of course they started using them in HPS in about actually, I guess they did use them in that time in both. They used them in HPS around the same time, now I think about it. So, yeah. And they used them in probe start metal halide as well as pulse. Now they were also, I don't know if these specifically were, but the 325, which is the power door version, was used in CMH in Chicago. I'm not sure if they ever used the single door. But anyways, enough yapping about that. We'll go ahead and take a look at it closer. So obviously this era of American Electric wasn't really great for paint, so it's already coming off in a couple of spots. I noticed that this time period was bad for paint from the really more in the late 90s, but also in the 2000s. So it's got a bit of blemishes here and there, which is okay. But my favorite part about it is that right there. Look at that beautiful blue tag, intact perfectly. And this was their newer tag. Their older one had thinner font, and it was more of a lightish blue. Actually, no, sorry, a dark blue. Some of it was so dark it looked like royal blue. But this was more of a standard color that everybody used. I can just show you over here on this OVM, they also use that same color. So, go ahead and open it up here. It is missing the gasket. It was on when I had it taken down, but, you know, it wasn't doing so hot, so I just got rid of it. I have to clean this. It is a little dirty. This was installed on a bridge over a lake. Or sorry, not a lake, a creek. And it had a lot of bugs in it and stuff, so I need to clean it more, but it's good enough for now. Running in Iwasaki Electric, or Iwasaki, whatever, 400 watt lamp inside. Had a coated bulb originally, which I found boring. If you want to see that, there's the little date tag right there. Tell you the voltage that it can take and the year it was made and all that stuff. And there's another tag in here. I guess it's this one and that one that have some info, but they're kind of worn out. So there's the ballast and the capacitor. It's just got one single capacitor. There's the terminal block right there and the slip fitter. A lot of the American Electric and ITT stuff has the slip fitter design like this. It can flip over to use on a 2-inch arm, and you flip it the other way for 1 1/4 inch, so it's kind of nice. Some fixtures you needed to get an adapter, like OV25s, although I got this one on this without that, because it was a 2-inch pipe originally, or whatever it was on. But anyways, back to this. It's made decently well. I mean, well, I say that. It's not really made that well, honestly. I had to bend the reflector right here for the door latch to clear. For some reason, it would sometimes not clear. I can't believe it came out of the factory like that, because the reflector's in the right spot. It can't really move anywhere else. That's how it mounts up there in those 2 screws. So I don't know why it was doing that, but it doesn't do it anymore, so that's all I care about. And you can see the top housing here has these standoffs for the power door version of it, which is called the 325. And then up there is where the photocell socket would be. So I guess that technically makes this, well, no, it says 125 right there. Sometimes the catalogs would put these as a 126 because of the lack of a photocell socket. But that says 125 on the little model tag there, so I guess it is still just a 125. But yeah, so it's pretty cool. These were one of the last modern mercury vapor fixtures produced. So, and this one is only made, 2 years before the ban. So it's neat to see the last of mercury vapor, even if it isn't made as well as the older ones were, or whatever. So I like the latches that they've continued to use. The very first American Electric Cobra head had this same latch. They continued it on. And for those who have trouble distinguishing these from the M400R3 made by GE, there are two ways to look at it. You can see the door kind of tapers up towards the slip fitter there. That's something that only the American Electric does. And then that little indent for the latch there is the other way to tell, because the GEs have a bail latch, which is different. It's external. So we'll go ahead and fire it up. It's a little noisy, but the capacitor's in good shape, despite being from a time period where capacitors just sucked all around. No matter what you bought, I mean, it would likely fail years later. And actually, these do typically suffer from a cap failure. We have, we still do have a lot of them, but most of them are the older ones now, because all the new ones we had have all died. The capacitors have quit on them, and the number of newer 125s in mercury vapor and HPS has really diminished. I should say newer as in this era from like 1996 to 2007/8, because they were still putting them up in HPS until they quit making them altogether 2 years ago. But the mercury ones with this blue tag, just like you see here, there used to be way more of these things around me, like a ton of them, and they're all most of them are gone now because the capacitors were just trash and the ballasts were just really not great either. So I'm really lucky this one works, and it works well. Now, most of the time in these newer CWA ballasted fixtures, the capacitor will just fail open, which means that actually if you replace the capacitor, the ballast should work. But if you leave the thing not working and still hooked up to power for a long period of time, it'll still cook the ballast, because the ballast is not made to run without a capacitor. It's specifically designed to be hooked up to that capacitor, and if it doesn't have it, it'll still cook itself. But if you catch the capacitor failure early on, like within maybe a month or less of it running without the capacitor functional, which means it's just open, then you're fine. But most times they just got forgotten about, the light went out, whatever, and they just get replaced. They try a new bulb, doesn't work, okay, new fixture. So that's the reason that there's so little of these specifically left, because there were tons. I mean, I could name you, which I'm not going to because I like my privacy, but I could name you like 8 different streets that were full of these things specifically, just like 10 years ago and 5 to 6 years ago, whatever. Mostly 10 though. They didn't have a long lifespan, honestly. And I've seen a couple of installations of these that within 2 years already had a replacement fixture on one side of the pole, which is crazy to me, because these weren't that old, and they still aren't to me. I mean, 2005, this is literally a 20-year-old fixture, which is nuts to imagine that this fixture that you're looking at right here is 20 years old, but it is. And yeah, it's they just weren't made that well. But again, it's cool to collect the last era of mercury vapor, so I'm more than happy to have these, considering I grew up with them. I remember when these things were still installed with mercury vapor as a kid. I remember them replacing like OV25s that got knocked over or the ballast failed, and M400 split doors, and older R2s that failed, OVMs. It was rare for the OVMs to quit that early on, but sometimes it happens. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Also, these replaced a lot of clamshells. And around here, our utility would put these up remote ballasted. If the fixture got damaged and it's like a clamshell and the ballast still worked, they would actually just buy one of these and order it with no ballast, and they'd put it up and run it off that old ballast. I have an OVM like that I got, and I can probably find really easily a couple examples of a remote ballasted 125 like this around me. So it's kind of cool the way that they would, do that back in the day. And this is on a GE arm, forgot to mention that. It's this exact combination with this short arm just like this and a 125 just like this in mercury vapor. Can be found pretty close to me on a pole. Of course, the 125 no longer works. I think the ballast has died, and they haven't done anything about it because all the other lights work, and I guess the trouble truck hasn't driven by that way. It hasn't worked for over a year now. So I guarantee you that thing is toast. Unless the feed failed or the photocell failed, I think it's probably just dead. Yeah, I think it's pretty much at full brightness now. I'll open it up while it's on and get a better look at it. And listen to that nice ballast hum. There it is. Beautiful, clear mercury lamp. But yeah, I still like these a lot. Like I said, I grew up with them, but I'm not going to kid myself and act like this is well made, because it really isn't. I mean, look at this rough casting only on this side. It's actually fine on the other, and it's pretty thin. And yeah, so another way to tell, one of the ways out of two different ways to tell this is a newer one is, for one, the NEMA tag. Some people say NEMA. I don't know why I say NEMA, I just do. So anyways, that is one way. The other way is if you can see through the hinge, it's a newer one, and if you can't, then it's older. Because on the older ones, there's no little holes here at all. And then they also have another iteration where you can see completely through these, which I guess was probably after mercury vapor. So there's all three of these little spots are empty. I don't think any of the mercury vapor ones ever had that. I think it's like post 2010. So only metal halide and HPS would be able to be like that. But yeah, so all things considered, it's really cool to have one of these, but like I said, they don't have the greatest ballast or capacitors, so tons of these just got replaced because they quit working entirely. Because they relamp these still, but when they just don't work with the new bulb, what's the point? I guess with the way that they pay for labor, they wouldn't want to just change a capacitor and spend too much time on one light. They also have tons of street lights out here, so I guess that makes sense, but yeah. So that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed this video on this 2005 American Electric Series 125 and 400 watt mercury vapor. Hard to believe this thing's 20 years old. I haven't really thought about that until just now, and I'm like, dang, that's kind of wild. Because to me, these things are still new. But I guess, yeah, mercury vapor has been banned for 17 years now, so yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.